Hi, this is Ed Gregory for photosincolor.com, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use Silver Efex Pro 2, which is part of the Nik collection by Google for Photoshop and Lightroom. Theme tune. Little octopus-like, wasn't it today? So, Silver Efex Pro 2. Why is it called Silver Efex? Well, essentially, this is what I think, so I may have got it wrong, but I'll try. I think that silver salts, inside black and white printing, you would suspend silver salts inside like a gelatin mixture, which when that goes through the process of developing an image on special paper for black and white, gives really crisp contrast. It means that it wouldn't fade over time and was really high quality. It's been around for like 200 years. Well, how it was since photography, like 150 years, I don't know. But essentially, I guess Google wanted it to sound all artsy by calling it Silver Efex. It's essentially black and white editing. So let's just get that clear. Anyway, today we're going to be looking at that in Photoshop and Lightroom. Now, if you want to follow my story on Snapchat, my code is here. There it is. So let's jump into Lightroom and Photoshop and have a look how to use this. So here we are, we're going to be using this photograph today. It's a beautiful high contrast image with loads of colors. So we really want to show how that goes in when we do black and white. Now today, I'm going to be editing in Lightroom because some of you have asked me why I've been doing it in Photoshop. So before I do it in Lightroom now, I'm going to show you how you would do it in Photoshop. Photoshop, you would right click and you would go to Edit In, and then you'd have Open a Smart Object inside Photoshop. When you get that smart object inside Photoshop, it looks like this. And then you just hit Silver Efex Pro 2 in your selective tool. If you don't have the selective tool, you go File, Automate, Nik Collection Selective Tool, and it will bring this up. Simple. But today, we're going to do it in Lightroom. So, Lightroom, we right click and we go Edit In, Silver Efex Pro 2, which is just here. And it's going to bring up a box for us like this. And this allows us to see how we're going to do this. So it's always going to edit it as a copy. Well, you wouldn't want to edit as original anyway because it's permanent. That's what's important with this plugin. When you're done inside Lightroom. So I'm going to edit it as a TIFF so it keeps all of the quality there. sRGB color space is fine because it's going to be viewed online and things. I'm going to keep my 16-bit so that it keeps as much detail that I can edit with. I'm going to change my resolution to 300 and my compression is 0. Okay, is none. Then I hit edit. And what that will do, it will duplicate the image actually on my computer as an actual base file. Okay, so it doesn't just create like a Lightroom duplicate, an actual duplicate. And then it loads up Silver Efex Pro 2. And what it does is it pops it into black and white for you right away. So I'm going to quickly talk through everything and then get through to this tutorial. So essentially, side here is where we have a load of presets, which is kind of amazing. You can click through, say classic, and literally you just click through them and it will load that preset onto the image. Really amazing, really simple. Just click it through. And there's all sorts of different ones in here, which is great. So I won't go over those. You can click on them and see what they are. You've got your modern ones which have kind of less contrast to them. You've got vintage ones that have more contrast and have borders and things like that. But down here you have something called custom. Now what you can do here, once you've made any adjustments on the right hand side, you'd hit plus, then you can save that as a custom preset essentially, which is kind of amazing. Now the next thing that you'll see at the top here, this is your comparison. So if you click on the first one, you can click you compare. So this is the flat black and white. Okay, just basic black and white when you first open it. So then you can hit this compare button, you can see any alterations that you've made. Click on the next one, it brings up this red line that you can actually move around and you can see the alterations. You can rotate that to be vertical as well, horizontal, sorry, and then you can do a side-by-side or end-to-end comparison. Amazing. The next thing is your zoom, so you can go in, say 100%, or you could go in 25% or however you'd want to do that, which is kind of amazing. And then you can change the background color from black, white, and medium gray. I always suggest editing in medium gray. Now, let's move over to the most important side, which is over here. So essentially, all of these different effects on the left-hand side are what is essentially, whatever the effects are done are these sliders just over this side. So you click on a different effect and the sliders move automatically. They're just presets. And you might think, so let's come back to neutral. You might think like, wow, okay, so there's only 5 sliders here. That's not too many. Well, let me tell you, I'm gonna open up each one of these and you will see that every single one has, so you've got underneath global, you've got brightness, contrast, structure, tonality. Then you've got your selective adjustments that you can make other changes to with your control points. You've then got your color filter. And let's have a look at that. You've got your details within your color filter. Oh, I've just come away from that, sorry. And then inside that, you've got your color film types and you've got your grain. And then outside of grain, you've got sensitivity. And then you've got your levels and curves. And then under finishing, you've got your toning. You've even got vignettes. And you're gonna have burn edges. And you're gonna have image borders. So you can see a massive amount of things that you can change on an image. So I'm gonna go through every single one and see if I can get through this in the next 10 minutes, okay? What I would suggest though, I'm gonna whiz through this, is take some time to look at this and really figure it out, because I think this is one of the best things that the Nik Selection gives you, is the black and white editing. It's actually the one that I think is better than Lightroom. Anyway, let's jump into this. Brightness, okay? That changed the overall brightness of your image. Essentially, it is a little bit like your exposure that you can see over this side. So you can change this, and you can also change the highlights, okay? Which only to the right boosts your highlights. So it's only looking at the brightest things. Your midtones, that looks at a lot of your skin tones, but anything in the middle of the image, and these shadows or darks, which is anything black, so you can change your black point. So for this image, for example, I'm gonna boost my highlights, so I'm gonna make these clouds pop out, and leave my midtones around in the middle, and I'm actually gonna bring my shadows down, so I've added a little bit of contrast. Now I've got a dynamic brightness. Now this is really clever. What it essentially does is if you boost the brightness, it is gonna help preserve the blacks, and you can see that. Or if you go the other way, what it does is it looks at it as a dynamic image, and it looks at kind of like an HDR, your brightness, your highlights and your shadows, and it kind of helps to, rather than just up here, just do it, the whole thing as a big wash. It kind of does it a little bit more cleverly. So it's using these 3 sliders and it helps you out. So bringing it down means that it doesn't just go really dark. You still preserve some of your highlights. If you go up, it preserves some of your shadows, essentially. So I'm actually gonna make it a little darker through the dynamic, which is awesome. Then you've got contrast, which does everything. So contrast, boost contrast, your whites are whiter, your blacks are blacker, and you go the other way and everything kind of goes gray. The whites go towards gray and the blacks go towards gray. I'm gonna leave my contrast somewhere in the middle. And then you have some choices. You can amplify the whites, which means that makes the whites whiter. It's kind of similar to this section up here, but this is really looking at inside the contrast. Amplify the blacks, so that means make the blacks blacker, because you're boosting the blacks, not in brightness, but in how defined they are. And then you can set your softness, okay? So that's kind of like an HDR where you can, if you boost it, it's gonna make it a little bit softer on all of the edges, so it's not gonna be quite as hard lines, whereas the other way, it's gonna make things really dramatic and bold. So I'm actually gonna leave the softness around 7. The next element is structure. And what this looks at is all of the textures inside it. So if you boost your structure, essentially what it's going to do is it's going to look at your textures and it's going to boost all of those textures so you can see what's happened to your clouds and your buildings there. And then the other way, it's going to make it nice and soft. So it does the opposite. Now, if I was to boost this up here, you can then choose how it happens inside the different elements. So I only want to, for example, let's leave this in the middle, boost my structure in the highlights. So that means all of the white areas are going to get boosted in their texture, and all of the shadows I'm going to make a little softer, for example. Or I can just boost in my shadows. So for this, I'm going to boost it in my shadows, boost my highlights, but I'm going to actually make it softer in my midtones, which is where the skin tones live. So something like that. Then you've got the fine structure, which means that you've obviously got, so let's just zoom in 100% on this. So if you were to let this load quickly, so if you were to have a look at the fine structure, okay, we're going to boost this all the way up. what you're going to see happen is it's kind of added the grain because it's done absolutely every single element. Whereas if you reduce the fine structure out, what it does is it only now focuses the structure on really fine, strong lines, as opposed to things that are close together, things that are a little further apart. So I'm actually going to bring my fine structure back quite a lot because I don't want to add grain to this image. So while we're zoomed in, let's just have a look at where we've got to so far. This is just a flat, and this is where we're at now, and it's looking absolutely fantastic. Look at the clock up here, the clarity, it looks amazing. So let's come back out from this and let's keep moving forwards. So now the next thing, so let's close this down, and what we're going to look at now is your selective adjustments. So what that does is anything inside the global adjustments you can now use using your control points. And this is what is massively powerful inside the Nik collection. So if I add a control point, all I have to do is click on this, and then I click where I want it to be. So remember, wherever the yellow dot is where is the reference point. And then while I'm in this, I'm actually going to click on this, which is the mask, okay? So it's going to show me anything in white is what is going to be affected by whatever changes I make. So you see, I'm just going to select this kind of blue in the sky, okay? And I'm going to do all of this area. So if I was to shrink the circle, it would only select in this area. Whereas if it go bigger, all of this is going to find similar tones. And I can literally go through. I can change my brightness, okay, of that area. And I can change anything that was in my global elements. So we turn this off, so we don't see that anymore. So I can say I want to bring my brightness back, so it's going to make that sky more dramatic. And I'm going to boost my contrast in that area, not too much though. And then I've got a drop down that gives me all of my extra little things that I can do. So I can essentially go, I want to boost my fine structure in the sky, for example. I'm actually going to bring it all the way back. And I'm going to amplify my structure. Great. So that looks great. That's really added that up there. So let's look, we can turn them on and off, and then on. Wow. And I want to do the same thing over in this area. So if I hit Control and I pick it up and then, or Option on a PC, and then I drop it over here, you see what it's going to do? It's actually going to move the same effect over here. But it's actually had far too much of an effect over on this side. So what I'm actually going to do is going to bring back the structure. Oh, bring back the contrast because I think I went too far. Too far with that. Is the brightness that really kind of messed that one up. And we're just going to bring it in somewhere just there. Now that's looking amazing. Look at the before and the after. Now it's starting to really come alive. So that's how you can use your control points. Now, just to show you your control points as well. So for example, I may want to select, I don't know, let's select multiple things over here. So we'll add a control point down here and we'll bring your brightness down as well. And then I can duplicate that by hitting Option, moving it across here. Like so, and then we'll make one more across here. I'm just doing this to show you. Now what I can do is if I hold down Shift and click on these three, like so, I can now group all of these. So that means that any changes I make on this one will now change on all of these across here. So I'm going to boost my contrast. No, I'm not. I don't like that at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to amplify my blacks down here. So I'm going to make it a bit darker on the front end. Great. So that looks great. So now we know how those selective adjustments work with the control points. Next thing, let's move on down. Color filter. So this essentially is, if I was to select, say, orange, it's going to add an orange filter to this, but it doesn't actually color the image. This is if the filter was when I took the photograph. So it actually uses this to amplify the image in different ways. A great one that I always think adding drama is the yellow one or the orange one. Always adds drama. So if I was to do that, I'm just going to pull back the strength way back on that. I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to turn that off. I don't want it. But you can actually, if you don't want one of these, you can select a specific hue, and just by scrolling through this, you can find something that can make the image really pop. I don't want any of that though, so I'll have my strength at 0. The next thing we're going to come down to is, in fact, I just want to change this one here. Again, brightness, I'm going to boost it. There you go, that's a bit better. So the next thing here is your film types. Now this is fantastic. We're in neutral right now, but it actually has some simple ones, like it's got an Ilford style, so it actually replicates certain types of film, okay? And that uses the tone curve, and it actually uses your sensitivity, because different film types are with different sensitivity to different colors. So if you went back to neutral, we can look here, like your reds, if it was more sensitive in the reds, you can see actually, within the image, because her skin tone is in the reds, if I was to reduce sensitivity in the reds, it would make her darker. And if I was to boost the sensitivity in the reds, it's going to make her lighter. So let's have a look at the sky, because this is what's amazing. I can bring the sky down just by pulling my cyan back and my blue back. Or I can go the opposite direction and brighten my sky by making it more sensitive to light within those color ranges. So that's how that one works, and is so powerful, and you can really affect an image very quickly, especially if there's any green like grass or anything. You can affect it dramatically with this. I'm actually going to pull back my sky to make that a little bit more dramatic, and I'm going to boost the reds and the yellows to make the model pop out. Great. So the next thing is curves. This is just like any regular tone curve, so you can add an S curve like this to add drama, or a reverse S curve to essentially fade it out a little bit. Nice and simple, and you can crush your blacks by lifting it up here, and that would crush all of your blacks. Okay, lots of different things you can do that. Double click on a point to remove it, or drag it off the side, and that will also remove it. So I'm actually going to put a little bit of an S curve in there like so. So that's all of that section. The very last thing that we're going to look at here, because it's so powerful, is your finishing adjustments. Now there's so much going on inside finishing, it's amazing. You've got toning. This is your split toning. Actually adds colors to an image, and it shows you what the shadows will look like and the highlights will look like. So we could add, say, a coffee color to this just here, and that's what it's going to look like. But then you can go in with more detail. So you can add the strength to this, okay? But then you could say, actually, the silver hue, so that's the darks, because that's what was actually being printed. You can say, I want to be purple. So then we're going to have, and we're going to boost that and make that purple, for example. And then we're going to look at the paper hue, which is the whites, because nothing was printed there. And we're going to make that red, for example. No, we're not. We're going to make that yellow. So then we have a balance slider that above that, so we can go more towards the silver, more towards what was printed, or more towards the whites. Where do we want the colors to be? Essentially, split toning. That's all that is. So I'm going to go back to neutral on that one. The next thing down, really simply, is a vignette. So you can add your different vignettes. Again, I would do this in Lightroom personally. I would not do it in this, because you can't change it afterwards, but you could do. And then the final thing, which is burn edges, which would be essentially a light leak, or as the printing was happening, as it was going through the chemicals, it was affected in a certain way. And essentially, you go to the left side here, and you can see I've burnt the edge in here. So I can go strength, and my size, I can essentially, size brings it further into the image, and your transition is how much it fades into the image. And then you can go through onto the top. I can add one up here. The right, I can add one on there, and the bottom, and you alter those individually. So the final thing to look at is at the very bottom, which is borders. And essentially, it just adds a border. So you can click on lots of predefined borders that are already in there just by clicking through all of these presets, and then you can edit them. So the size of the border, okay, how much white you want on the edge, that's basically what that is. The spread, which is how much of a shadow you want it to have. So this is 0 shadow, or you can go all the way up here so it looks like it's lifting off the paper, essentially, or there's a black edge to it. And then you can have like a real rough edge to it, or you can have a clean edge to it. And then there's a button down here, which is vary. So you click on that and it just makes some variants of the settings that you have. So you can click on, say, number 4, and then it will do that. I don't love those, so I'm actually going to turn off the border on that. But let's have a look at the before and the after of this image. It is dramatic what we were able to do. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have done this edit, but I just wanted to show as many different options to this as I possibly could within a short enough video. So again, All of these side things, once you've got something that you really like, to save yourself going through all of these options again, all you have to do once you've got into this, you're going to come into custom and you're going to hit plus. And that's going to save all of these options down there as a brand new preset. So for example, I could call this photos in color, which is pick new. Okay, and then I can see this is what it is. So if I was to come in and now let's go into the library and say, oh, I selected this one. Oh, you know what? I don't really like it. I'm going to come into custom, click on this one. It's going to add all of those effects back in. Now, once I'm happy with an image, remember you can't go backwards in Lightroom. So this is it. You hit save. And then it's essentially going to add all of these effects to the image, and then it's going to drop it back into your Lightroom folder, and then you're good to go. So that there, I know I whipped through it, but it was really necessary to get as much information over to you as possible. That's how to use the Silver Efex Pro plugin for Lightroom and Photoshop, and I think it is massively powerful. Some tools I wouldn't use, like the vignette and the border say, but the other tools are fantastically powerful. So this is Ed Gregory for photosincolor.com. Booyah.